My name is Anazi, and I have a special guest joining me today. Welcome to Ken Osano, who is the founder and the lead consultant for Desi Consultants. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Anazi, for this invite.
Always a pleasure to have you, and we're very excited and looking forward to also having you at Smarter Mobility Africa this year. But before we go into the conference, just tell us a little bit about your specific call to action and hoping that you inspire your audience after your presentation. How would you like to do that?
Thank you, Anazi, again. Well, my call to action for smarter mobility Africa is that we need to have a collaborative approach towards electric mobility in Africa. And the reason why my focus is on collaborative approach is, first of all, we have a new transport model intervention that requires multiple stakeholder players from the EV suppliers, the EV policy and regulatory framework makers, the battery technology manufacturers, the utility providers, that is the power grid infrastructure. And so we need to have every player putting in their best foot forward and make sure that we have EV infrastructure development ahead of demand. The charging network always gets ahead of demand for any successful electric mobility rollout. And that requires investments, that requires private sector participation, that requires government participation, that requires awareness creation and advocacy amongst the users so that there is demand, whether it's fleet management, demand for electric mobility transportation possibilities. So my clarion call moving forward is that we should have a collaborative approach. Every segment, every player should sort of up the ante in terms of their input in making sure that the e-mobility ecosystem is vibrant and dynamic. And of course, very important in this whole scenario is funding and innovative financing models, especially if you think about the fact that upfront cost for electric vehicles is relatively high, whether it is in the two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler segments. So we need innovative financing models that will enable end users and potential EV owners to access and own these vehicles. And in this case, I would recommend pay-as-you-go model and then various models also, especially for the commercial segment, like the lease to own. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're touching on a lot of exciting trends and innovations around the e-mobility transition. Can you expand a little bit more on some other innovations that you're probably going to be touching on at the conference?
Uh, there are emerging trends in the e-mobility segments, and so one of the things that probably one wants to look at is emerging business models and opportunities coming up. For example, energy as a service, now transport as a service, batteries as a service, battery swapping, vehicle to grid models. So all these are emerging vertical, I would say, to be vertically integrated in the ecosystem for the e-mobility. And the beauty for us in Africa is that all those are job opportunity areas. And then if you tie that to the fact that Africa is a leading producer or source, let me put it this way, it's a source of critical metals required for the battery technology. I think we have the highest cobalt, second highest cobalt source in the world from DRC. We have graphite, we have lithium, we have vanadium, we have manganese in various countries in Africa. So I think Africa is very well positioned to move forward and to be integrated in this supply value chain for dynamic electric mobility ecosystem.
Yeah, certainly we're definitely positioned in the right places, but Realistically, we are still facing some stumbling blocks and some challenges. In your opinion, what do you think some of those challenges are, and how do you think we can tackle them?
There are multiple of challenges, obviously, that we are currently facing. The first one being unreliable electricity, because the whole e-mobility platform, I would say, is embedded squarely on uh, reliable electricity supply and a reliable electricity grid. And so moving forward, we need governments, we need other stakeholders, the funders, we need private sector engagement. And that's why from the beginning I said it has to be a collaborative effort to make sure that we stabilize our electricity supply. And one of the things that we should be looking at, and we are blessed with in Africa, is solar energy. So we should look at solarizing and supplementing electricity supply to be able to provide the power that we need for the electric 2, 3, and 4 wheelers. Another challenge would be generally, like I said earlier, again, upfront cost for electric vehicles, whether it is 2 wheelers, 3 wheelers, or 4 wheelers, is relatively high compared to the ICE models. So we need a financing mechanism that makes it relatively affordable to acquire. But the beauty is that the total cost of ownership for electric vehicles is much, much better in the end because of, I would say, minimized or limited expenses on maintenance and service. And so we need to plug in there and get financiers who are able to understand the risk aspect and to be able to do risk financing of acquisition of electric vehicles and development of the charging infrastructure and there's energy support system required for that. Another challenge is that I think we still need to do a lot of advocacy and awareness, create and just make our government, our people aware that electric mobility is the sustainable option in terms of transportation that we have at the moment, and get all the players sort of giving us goodwill, be it government, be it the funding sources, be it the technology developers, and encourage battery technology and manufacturing plants to come to Africa and to be able to optimize our resources, which are relatively low cost compared to what they're doing in other parts of the world. I believe again that many of our governments really haven't incentivized the private sector and the general public in terms of uptake of e-mobility. So we need to look at the policies and regulatory framework aspect of electric mobility and put in incentives, whether they're fiscal or tax exemptions, that encourage uptake of electric vehicles and the general development of electric mobility space. We have seen various countries putting in certain measures. Kenya, for example, has got tax import duty reduction on, an excise duty reduction on electric vehicles. It's not enough. We need to move forward. Rwanda has tried something. I think South Africa has got various tax elements it is putting under consideration. But generally, across Africa, whether it's West Africa and even Northern Africa, we need incentives to motivate the up. I would say uh, the relatively expensive and I would say high-end investments required to jumpstart the electric mobility in the various segments. Uh, Probably one would look at also innovative monetization of electric mobility. I think it's still not well embedded. For example, the carbon credit program is not well embedded yet. For us, for me, where I see it as one of the low-hanging fruits that carbon credit monetization can actually supplement and even fully complement the cost of powering the electric mobility space. So those are some of the few, I think, what I've said, some of the stumbling blocks that need to be looked at. Of course, access to EVs is another issue because Africa is largely 85% driving on used vehicles, or I would say low value in terms of acquisition. And electric vehicles, generally speaking, are new units. Those are the ones that are available. And so access is difficult. And so we need to create a system that maybe when we assemble locally, accessibility could be better, could be improved compared to when we import fully built units and based on European or Chinese prices, which are, I would say, expensive for us in Africa. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. So if someone wanted to be part of the sector and had no knowledge of what is actually going on in this sector, just coming from your learnings, how would you advise them how would you advise them to enter and what would you think they should look out for?
First of all, I would tell them that I would encourage them that they are in the right space. E-mobility it's going to be the driving force for transportation if they're keen on transportation as a segment. And electric mobility also has got multiple, I would say, business options. And so, for a business person, for an investor, it gives you what one would say portfolio balancing and de-risking of your business. Because when you invest in an electric mobility transportation as a service, then it can then also allow you to venture into vehicle to grid as a service. You know, the excess energy can be plugged into and sold out. You can carbon monetize your business and supplement your business. You could easily integrate renewable energy into your business and lower the costs of operations and increase your profitability. And in any case, most of the OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, have given commitments that by 2030, 2035, they should stop producing and manufacturing ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine. And that means that definitely we don't have an option but to enhance and improve what we have in the space of electric mobility. So for such an investor, I would tell them they're in the right space. I would tell them to always make sure that charging infrastructure is developed ahead of the demand. That means you should have the powering capability before you invest in the equipment of the motorbike or the four-wheeler or the three-wheeler or the truck. It's a very clear thing. People have been asking which one is first, chicken or the egg. In this case, it's clearly the chicken, and the chicken is the charging infrastructure. The egg is the vehicles and the motorbikes that we bring on board. Yeah, and again, the beauty about e-mobility is that it's an evolving space. We are we're looking at alternative fuels coming through. The technologies is evolving very fast. Battery technology is moving so fast that the cost of operating will be cheaper in the near future. The accessibility will be enhanced. Alternative fuels like hydrogen are the technology is coming up pretty fast. We are looking at LPG as an alternative option. And so, in my view, we are looking at providing transportation with so many evolving technologies designed to support it and to subsidize it. And so in the end, the subsidies will come through, technologies will come through, and ultimately we will achieve sustainability. And I think, for example, if you're a fleet operator,
Yeah,
you will be operating cheaply, profitably, and sustainably.
exactly. So, Ken, you just touched on something earlier. So I want to allude to that right now about meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. If we don't get there, what will happen? If we don't meet those SDG 2030, 2050 goals, what will happen?
I think we are already meeting them, maybe not fully, but definitely yes. We cannot compare ourselves, for example, with ICE era.
Yeah.
Electric mobility, definitely we can demonstrate that we are reducing the carbon print. That's for sure. So already we have a contribution towards the SDGs. We are creating green jobs. We are building capacity. We are enhancing inclusivity, social and economic inclusivity. I'm aware about women in mobility as a program that is going on in multiple countries. Kenya is one of the leading countries where this is happening. I'm aware that because of the multiple, I would say, vertically integrated segments of e-mobility, we have been able to build skills, create capacity, and address poverty directly in that sense.
Yeah.
So I like the question, but I don't think the question that you've asked is reflective of what's going on the ground. I believe strongly so that we are making a lot of progress towards multiple SDGs. In fact, in one of my previous presentations, I was just profiling what e-mobility opportunities are and what and how they're aligned. And I realized that we are looking at addressing 13 SDGs already, including partnerships for development. So I think we are already addressing an array of SDGs. The only thing is that we need to now quantify and share the data of to what extent do we meet the requirements for each of the specific SDGs. Some of them, I believe we are meeting them fully, but some of them we have a long way. But for sure, e-mobility is enabling us to look at 13 SDGs all at the same time.
Hmm. Wow. Okay, so I want to go home and do my homework on that. Thanks, Ken. I just want to ask you one last question around collaboration because you said this is an evolving industry to be part of. So
Yeah.
if something is evolving at this type of a speed, I think, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think collaboration is key. So are there any potential partnerships or connections that you would like to explore? And what's your take on collaborating in this space?
So unfortunately, I will not physically be at SMA, but I would have. I really, really wanted to be, but anyway, that's something else. So uh, collaboration is very important in achieving the sustainable goals that we have because of the nature of and the scope of the space we are in. We have multiple players, we have multiple inputs from EV manufacturers to battery technology manufacturers, technology and manufacturers, to general innovators in terms of business models for the various e-mobility segments, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, and others, to renewable energy integration, to policy and regulatory framework required for each country to incentivize all the other players, to awareness creation just amongst the general populace, also amongst the funders, also amongst government stakeholders. So the collaboration will have to be multimodal. And I would say that each specific area will require its own deep end collaboration with the specific players. For example, EV infrastructure development we have the every electric vehicle manufacturers, but we need to collaborate with them to come to Africa, for example, benefit us directly by creating assembly plants. Like what I see is already happening in certain countries. But beyond assembling plants, can we collaborate with them in a way that they can develop skills and capacity builders from an infrastructure perspective? So in the future, we have these vehicles more readily available, more affordable. When it comes to electricity and grid infrastructure development, we have investors like the AFDB, we have the World Bank, we have the government as a key stakeholder, and then we have the private sector and also government as the main consumer. How can we work together and bring all the players together so that we have seamless smart EV charging experience? When I say smart EV charging, I mean that all our EV chargers, for example, should have smart meters and smart energy management system and payment management system to allow for investors not to shy away, but rather enjoy the space they're in, but at the same time encourage users and e-mobility drivers or riders to enjoy their space, enjoy their equipment, make the money, and enjoy the transportation as a space. And of course, we need the likes of UN, the USDG monitoring components. There's so many other players coming into space that are looking at sustainability, environment conservation, and creating just an enabling ecosystem that works for everyone. So it's a very, I would say, it's a multi-focused approach that will get us through. Individually, in your small little space, yes, you may have your scope of stakeholders, but e-mobility is impacting across boards. And then think about it this way, that when you have transport, you can then impact on education, you can then impact on healthcare, you can then impact on social economic inclusion, you can then impact on well-being and so many things, infrastructure development, quality of life. So we are impacting in so many ways, and therefore we need to have a structured collaborative effort. I cannot prescribe one specific way of doing it. I can only say that each individual player in your space, you need to scope it and you need to understand who are the potential partners and stakeholders you need to integrate to optimize and to maximize your goal, either as a transporter, as an energy supplier, or as a business person doing business, or as a consumer of the product.
Yeah, and who are those individuals or organizations that stand out to you?
For example, if I look at the funding component, one would look at Energy Environment Partnership for Africa, EEP. One would look at UK Manufacture, which is putting in quite some funds in some countries. One would look at UK Aid. I think there are various other funding mechanisms. Also, specific government stakeholders. Here we're talking about the resident government ministries of transport and resident directors of transportation. There are departments which are responsible for sustainability programs within the government. And then, of course, we look at the private sector, various private sector players, from those who are keen on the electric mobility two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, and even the buses. And then we look at the business space as well. They're just those who are keen on utilizing electric mobility technology. For example, I know in Uganda, in Kenya, in Ghana, even in Senegal, we have the fleet operators, taxi and bus fleet operators. They're looking at the transitioning from ICE or diesel-based buses to electric buses, and they are looking at how can we access these buses, even though they're expensive to buy. And then therefore you find the private sector being innovative. They come back and say, listen, pay as you go, don't buy the battery. We will give you the frame of the bus, the chassis, but which you'll pay upfront for. which is relatively affordable, but then you will then pay for the energy that you use as you go. So that basically makes it possible to access this technology and optimize it and put it into the competitive space that we are in. And so those are some examples of the stakeholders that one would be looking at. And of course, the financing, the banks have come to realize that now they're starting to develop an appetite for electric mobility financing, the regular commercial banks. So they have this sort of carbon funding for electric mobility. And the rates that they're considering are starting to be competitive compared to the commercial rates. So, for example, going into a bank as a consumer, I have the confidence to say, listen, I want to buy an electric vehicle, but I'm not going to buy it at the same interest rate like you would charge an ICE financing for me. And banks are starting to listen and they're starting to structure products to that effect to address that need.
Sure. Oh, multifaceted indeed, as you said, a multifaceted approach. And so much was said today. Ken, thank you so much for just highlighting like quite a lot in such a short space of time. And I'm sure you and I could probably sit here the whole day talking
Yeah.
about talking about e-mobility, green fleets, and improving the new urban era. Can you just give us one last parting shot, like your one last statement before we close off our interview?
Well, electric mobility is happening I would say for the benefit of Africa. Excuse me. People are fast at learning. Our governments are waking up and doing the right thing, and they're promoting policy and regulatory frameworks that basically are encouraging creation of dynamic ecosystem for e-mobility. And so I would urge investors to come flooding in Africa. We have the critical metals that are required for raw materials for battery technology. We have I would say, the largest young population willing to uptake electric mobility. The consumer perception on transport models is changing, and they are very sensitive and they need seamless, contactless, virtual, reliable, sustainable transport experience. And that's where you plug in electric mobility. And also the fact that it's creating jobs, green jobs for us from multiple segments in terms of the verticals that I just mentioned, energy as a service, transport as a service, vehicle to grid is coming up as an area, payment management systems for e-mobility, and other added value systems that are coming up. And so I'm very excited, and I think Africa is excited, and I think even the other stakeholders coming into Africa are excited. I would encourage them to keep coming, help us build capacity in Africa, and help us to create sustainable and dynamic e-mobility ecosystem, because
Mm.
everyone stands to gain, and we stand to benefit most as Africans moving forward.
I'll say amen to that. Thank you once again. That was Ken Osano, who's the founder and the lead consultant from DC Consultants. All right, so that's all the time we have for today at Smart Mobility Africa. Please do not forget to subscribe to our weekly newsletter, which comes out every Tuesday. And don't forget to also follow us on LinkedIn and our other socials. Hashtag SMA Summit, hashtag SMA News, and hashtag SMA for All. Thank you once again for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.